Book 7 of the Odyssey is called Phaeacia's Halls and Gardens. It's all very civilized. At the end of the last chapter, Odysseus had lost everything in a shipwreck, except his life. He had reached land, exhausted, alone, and uncertain of where he had arrived. Athena saw to it that he'd meet a kindly princess who fed and clothed him and made him feel human again. Now, for the first time since his shipwreck, actually before that, since before his time on Calypso's island, 𝙏𝙤𝙤𝙦, he will enter a human community. As Odysseus approaches the city of the Phaeacians, Athena intervenes once again. She surrounds him in a protective mist, hiding him from view as he walks through the streets. Why? Because not everyone welcomes a stranger. Odysseus is still vulnerable. He doesn't know who to trust, and the people he encounters may not trust him either. But all that will change. Odysseus is about to enter the palace of King Alcinous. This is a place where hospitality is taken very seriously, with structure and formal rules. As we read, we'll see how this society receives a stranger, and what it reveals about order, generosity, and power. But before we explore this society and culture, let's trace what happens in Book 7 with an objective plot summary. Odysseus sets out for the palace of King Alcinous and Queen Arete in the land of the Phaeacians. As he approaches the city, Athena appears to him once again, this time disguised as a young girl. Odysseus asks her for directions to the palace, and she agrees to guide him. But she also takes an important precaution. Athena surrounds Odysseus in a protective mist, hiding him from the people of the city. This way, no one will question or trouble him on his way. As they walk, she gives him careful advice. She tells him that when he enters the palace, he should go directly to Queen Arete and ask for her help. This is important because she holds great influence in the royal household. Then Athena departs, leaving Odysseus to continue alone. When he arrives at the palace, Odysseus pauses to take in his surroundings. He sees the remarkable gardens, orderly, abundant, and always in bloom, and then enters a great hall where the Phaeacians are gathered in a feast. Still hidden in a mist, he walks amongst them unseen. At the moment he approaches the royal couple, the mist lifts. Odysseus steps forward and throws his arms around the knees of Queen Arete, asking for her help in returning home. The court reacts with surprise, but an elder named Echinus speaks up and reminds them that a stranger should be welcomed and given proper hospitality. King Alcinous responds generously. He offers Odysseus food, shelter, and even promises to provide him with safe passage home. Queen Arete questions Odysseus, noticing the clothing he wears and recognizing her own handiwork. In response, Odysseus tells the story of his time on Calypso's island, his journey across the sea, and his meeting with her daughter, Nausicaa. Satisfied with his story, the royal couple welcomes him to stay. Book 7 ends with Odysseus formally received as a guest. He's given a safe place to stay and openly welcomed into the court. Now that we've traced the events of the chapter, we can take a closer look at how hospitality, or Xenia, is practiced in this society. We've already seen that not every encounter with a stranger is safe. As Odysseus enters the city, Athena hides him in a mist so he can avoid any interaction with the villagers. This suggests that outside the palace, strangers may be met with suspicion, even fear. This is the opposite of xenia. We might call it xenophobia, a fear or distrust of outsiders. But everything changes when Odysseus enters the royal court. Here, hospitality is not casual, it is formal, structured, and expected. Odysseus knows not to just wander in and introduce himself. He follows a specific pattern. He approaches Queen Arete, lowers himself in a gesture of supplication, and asks for help. This is a ritual, and the response is equally structured. The court pauses. An elder speaks, reminding them of their duty. And then King Alcinous responds with generosity, offering food, shelter, his daughter's hand in marriage, that might be going a little far, and a promise to help Odysseus get back home. Is this simple human kindness? There's more to it than that. This is a demonstration of power. The Phaeacians show that they have the resources, the stability, and the confidence to welcome a stranger without fear. Their hospitality reflects a well-ordered society, one that can afford to be generous. In this way, xenia becomes more than a personal virtue. It becomes a public expression of order, authority, and cultural values. Let's look closely at how Odysseus presents himself when he enters the court. This is a carefully structured moment. Odysseus doesn't stride in boldly. Instead, he approaches Queen Arete carefully and lowers himself into the ashes near the hearth. Literally lowers himself. This gesture matters. By sitting in the ashes, Odysseus places himself in the position of a suppliant, someone asking for help. He makes himself humble and as non-threatening as possible. This is part of the ritual we discussed. But just as important as what he does is what he does not do. Odysseus does not announce who he is. He does not say, "I am the king of Ithaca," or "I am a hero of the Trojan War." He withholds his identity. This choice is deliberate. If he revealed who he was, the situation would change immediately. Instead of allowing the court to demonstrate generosity, the interaction might become one of recognition or obligation. By remaining unknown, Odysseus allows the ritual of hospitality to unfold as it should. The structure of xenia requires stranger, supplication, response, not famous hero, recognition, reward. Now listen to how Odysseus speaks. His language is respectful and restrained. He first asks for mercy and for blessings on everyone in the court. He addresses Arete directly, asking for help in returning home. He does not boast. He does not demand. He doesn't reveal anything more than necessary. This is language used with precision, and the effect is immediate. The ritual continues as it should. An elder rises up and reminds the court of their duty. King Alcinous responds with generosity. The court welcomes Odysseus. His first brief speech has been a success, not because it's dramatic or forceful, or even an especially heart-wrenching story, but because it is controlled, appropriate, and carefully adapted to the situation. This is Odysseus understanding the roles of xenia and demonstrating his emotional intelligence and social intelligence. He has the ability to understand this social system and to move within it successfully. We are maybe not too surprised at the generosity of this royal court, because Homer gave us a peek at them before we even met them. Before Odysseus fully enters the royal court, Homer pauses to describe something else, the gardens of King Alcinous. This is an interesting choice. we might expect to first meet the king and queen, to see how they behave, how they speak, how they receive a stranger. But instead, we are shown their world. Homer describes a garden that is orderly, abundant, and constantly productive. Fruit trees grow in careful arrangement. Crops are always in season. Nothing is left to chance. This is more than a botanical description of a pleasant place. This passage about the garden is an example of symbolism, when a concrete image represents a larger idea. The garden reflects the kind of society the Phaeacians have created. It's stable, prosperous, well-ordered, and importantly, it is controlled. Nothing here is wild or unpredictable. This stands in contrast to the world Odysseus has just come from. The open sea was chaotic and dangerous. Calypso's island, 𝙏𝙤𝙤𝙦, though beautiful, was isolated and removed from human society. Here, everything is structured and intentional. By showing us the garden first, Homer prepares us for what we are about to see inside the palace: a society that values order, a court that follows clear rules, a system where hospitality is not uncertain but reliably, religiously practiced. The setting shapes our expectations. Before we meet the people, we already understand something about how they live. Now that we've planted this idea about symbolism, it might influence your reading going forward. It might also be an interesting exercise to return to earlier passages and think about what could Homer's language represent symbolically. There are some exercises for you to explore in the reader's guide. Find the link below. You might get the sense that there's more and more to keep track of, the more literary devices we learn. For instance, in this book, did you notice more examples of characters being described with repeated phrases, expressions like bright-eyed Athena, or Poseidon being referred to as the Sea Lord? Remember, those are called epithets. An epithet is a descriptive phrase that is regularly attached to a character. It highlights a key trait, something we are meant to remember about them. These repeated phrases also helped in oral storytelling, giving the poet familiar patterns to return to. Now, alongside epithets, we sometimes encounter a different kind of reference: allusion. An allusion is a brief, indirect reference to something the audience is expected to recognize. So, for instance, if I refer to something as forbidden fruit, I'm alluding to the story of the Garden of Eden, and it makes sense if I'm talking about something tempting but prohibited. Here's an example from this book. When King Alcinous is addressing his court, Homer refers to the Fates as the overbearing spinners, which looks a little bit like an epithet. But this is why we draw a distinction, and we call this a different literary device, an allusion. The poem does not stop to explain who they are. Homer assumes that his audience already understands the idea, that the Fates are imagined as figures who spin and weave the thread of a person's life. That description occurs in other works of Greek mythology. So this reference carries that meaning from other stories without explanation. That is what makes it an allusion. It's alluding to something we're all expected to recognize and already understand. So while an epithet repeats and reinforces, an allusion points outward, connecting the story to a larger world of shared knowledge. By the end of Book 7, we have seen a complete picture of how hospitality functions in this society. Not as we typically experience simple acts of kindness, but as a system. an essential part of the very fabric of this sophisticated society. Odysseus begins this chapter hidden in mist, moving through a city where he's not yet known and is not yet safe. He's almost there, almost back on his feet. But there's still uncertainty. There's still risk. Once he enters the palace, everything changes. Hospitality becomes structured, predictable, reliable. There are rules for how to approach, rules for how to speak, rules for how to respond. And when those rules are followed, the outcome is clear. The stranger is welcomed. The request is heard. Help is given. Through this process, we see something larger than a single interaction. We see a society that is orderly, prosperous, and confident in its own stability. The gardens reflect it, the court reinforces it, the language supports it. Even the generosity of King Alcinous, offering food, shelter, and a journey home, is part of this system. It's not reckless, it's not wasteful. It is a display of strength, a demonstration that this society has the resources and the order to extend hospitality without any hardship or inconvenience. And Odysseus, for his part, succeeds not by force, but by understanding how to move within that system. He observes, he adapts, he speaks carefully, he waits to reveal who he is. In doing so, he takes another step toward home. Not just across distance, but back into human society. Our focus at Socratica is to help you learn more. If you'd like to continue your work with this chapter, our reader's guide will help. Find the link below. You'll compare how hospitality, Xenia, is practiced across different settings in the Odyssey, and consider what those differences reveal about each society. You'll also take a closer look at Odysseus' speeches, asking why his words are so effective, even when he reveals so little about himself. And you'll explore how imagery, like the gardens of Alcinous, can carry deeper meaning, showing not just what a place looks like, but what it represents. Take your time with the text. Look closely at how the scene is constructed. Notice what is said and what is left unsaid. When you're ready, we'll continue as Odysseus remains in the court and his story begins to unfold.